Hello, Arena. Hey, it was good to hear from you again. And as far as getting this video for you, uh, I always enjoy doing this. And as usual, it's kind of more the way the question is, and less about you. But this one kind of gives you a almost like using a double negative in as a question format. It takes you down one path, and then at the very end says which one of these is not that. But anyway, what this question is asking you to look for is to look for examples within the choices that showcase or highlight the fact that changes in a population's environment can affect genetic variation. But then it says pick one of these, pick the one that's the least supportive example, and that phrase supportive example, that's a tough one to understand. But what it's really asking is that pick the one that does not showcase directly how environment can affect change in population. So we'll go through each of these. So we'll start with the one that you did choose, and you might have been thinking that you were choosing the one that it was asking for, but the way that the colors change in the peppered moth population does show environment can affect genetic change is the idea of industrialization in England. I'm sure you're well familiar with this example. Is that when it started putting up factories, and the factories kind of covered the area with soot. At that time, the white moth was the most prevalent, and the kind of the grayish, whitish, speckled moth was the least populated. But when the soot went down, that meant the moths that were white stood out, and the peppered moths were camouflaged. So over time, what was the minority became the majority. And so that is an example of how changes of population can affect genetic variation. The second one, pesticide resistance in garden insects. And actually these two are kind of the same idea, just different organisms. But if it's like, for example, if you take a pesticide out to your garden and you spray it down, and you're trying to get rid of, like at our house, my wife loves to garden, and she gets these cabbage moths, which are good pollinators, so she didn't do anything to get rid of them. She just hopes for the best each year, and tries to put plants out there that I guess that she thinks are more resistant themselves. But anyway, and so if you take a pesticide out there and you spray it, and you're trying to get rid of, I don't know, aphids or whatever, and it kills all the aphids but one, because that aphid has a resistance to that pesticide, and then in the process of reproduction, making more aphids that have that pesticide resistance. Now you've got a bunch of them that can resist it. And now the pesticide won't work at all. So you've gone from it being very successful, 99%, to not very successful at all. And that's an example. And antibiotics and bacteria is the same way. If you get a bacteria infection and you take your antibiotics and you kill 99% of the bacteria, well, the 1% that remains now is going to start reproducing and making more that have the opportunity to have that resistance. So you're going from what used to be the minority, 1%, to now is the majority. And those are all examples of how environmental changes can cause genetic changes. The one that you chose, and I don't know if, and I can't decide if you chose it because you thought it was the right answer for the question, or the question was worded in such a way where it isn't as very clear what it wants. But changes in genetics and populations, as you know, meiosis, it can occur just on its own, okay, without any reference to environmental. You can get, but by the time you have crossing over between the mother and father. You've got the way that they're arranged within the meiosis process can create change. Just mutations alone within the DNA can cause that. So it can have change, and it does have change. It has its own way. The process has its own way. Is what I'm trying to say, to take that change, which is why offspring don't look exactly like the parents, and it's usually a blending of the traits. But anyway, hopefully that helps, and if not, let me know, and we can do something to further explain or give better examples as needed. Anyway, see you next time.